February 1962. Universal Studios backlot. Harper Lee stood outside. Stage 18, watching crew members carry props through the narrow door. A wooden rocking chair, its arms worn smooth from decades of use. A leather-bound Bible with gold-edged pages catching the California light. A child's slingshot made from a Y-shaped branch and rubber bands. Each piece pulled from the pages of her Pulitzer prize-winning novel, and made solid, made real, made ready to be filmed under studio lights for audiences who'd never seen the actual Alabama porches where these objects belonged, where they'd lived and meant something to families weathering the Depression. She'd spent 3 weeks on this Hollywood set now, approving costume designs down to the last button, walking through the recreated Macomb courthouse with its balcony, where colored folks would sit during trials, examining the Finch family porch that production designer Henry Bumstead had built from her detailed descriptions and his own trip to Monroeville. But she hadn't yet seen him, Gregory Peck, the man Universal Pictures had chosen to play Atticus Finch, the man who would play her father, though the studio executives didn't quite understand. That's what they were really asking him to do. Not just inhabit a character from a novel, but resurrect a man who died 6 years earlier, bring him back through cloth and posture, in the particular way he'd held his shoulders when the weight of the world pressed down. Wait, because what happened in the next 40 seconds would reduce Harper Lee to sobbing tears in front of 40 Hollywood professionals who thought they'd seen everything. Would launch Gregory Peck into the defining role of his career and change both their lives forever, and would create a moment so perfectly human, so impossibly right, that even the hardened crew members who'd built 1,000 movie sets and watched 1,000 actors transform would fall completely silent, understanding they were witnessing something rare. It was a single glimpse through a dressing room door, one breathless sentence torn from Harper's throat, and a joke delivered with such impeccable timing and grace that it captured everything about why some actors don't just inhabit characters, they resurrect the dead and give them breath. And for Harper Lee, a woman who'd poured her childhood and her father and her entire Alabama heart into a novel she never expected would sell more than a few thousand copies, seeing Gregory Peck walk out of that dressing room in a Panama hat and a 3-piece white linen suit wasn't just good casting, or even great casting. It was like watching her father step out of 1935 Monroeville and into 1962 Hollywood, breathing again, walking again, alive in a way she thought was lost forever when they buried Amasa Coleman Lee in the red Alabama clay. Director Robert Mulligan had warned her not to come to set too soon. "Please, Harper," he'd said the week before, his thin face tight with the anxiety that plagued every filmmaker attempting to adapt a beloved book for the screen, knowing that authors arrive like judges, their very presence a weight of expectation. "Don't come to set until we're ready. Let us find the character first. Let Gregory settle into the role without feeling watched." Mulligan spoke from hard experience. He'd seen authors freeze actors mid-performance, make them self-conscious, destroy the spontaneity that makes cinema breathe. But Harper Lee was no hand-wringing novelist hiding in a New York apartment sending telegrams of complaint. She'd flown to California in late January, rented a small furnished apartment near the studio for $80 a month, and spent every available hour watching them build Macomb Street from lumber and paint and the kind of obsessive attention to period detail that surprised and moved her. She'd expected Hollywood phoniness, the cheap fakery of backlots. Her childhood friend Truman Capote had warned her about the industry's contempt for authenticity, the way they'd strip out everything genuine and replace it with manufactured sentiment designed to sell popcorn. "They'll ruin it, Nella," Truman had warned her over a crackling long-distance call from New York using her real name. The way only he could, Hollywood would turn Atticus into a greeting card hero, he said. But standing in California's strange winter light that February, Harper felt something unexpected. These people cared with Horton Foote. She approved every cut, knowing film lived in faces and silences. Beside Henry Bumstead's sketches, she corrected details only she knew. The porch swing's angle, the railing height, the right Alabama tree.
The dressing room door opened with a soft click that somehow carried across the soundstage noise. Gregory Peck stepped out into the afternoon light filtering through the high windows. 6 feet 3 inches of carefully composed dignity, exactly as the novel described Atticus Finch. Standing before a jury exactly as Harper's father had stood when he addressed a courtroom or walked scout to school or sat on the porch reading, while the evening settled over Monroeville like a benediction. The Panama hat sat at precisely the right angle, not jaunty the way a Hollywood leading man might wear it to suggest charm. Not severe like a hanging judge, but practical and somehow humble. The way a small-town lawyer would protect himself from Alabama's sun without drawing attention or making himself look important. The 3-piece white linen suit caught the studio lights and seemed to glow with its own dignity, pressed and proper and somehow noble despite the Depression-era setting. Because Atticus Finch would never let his children see him looking defeated or diminished, even when the bank account ran dry and clients paid in hickory nuts and turnip greens and promises they couldn't keep. The wire-rimmed glasses that weren't an actor's affectation, but a necessity for a man who read law books by lamplight every evening after the children went to bed, who strained his eyes studying precedents and preparing defenses for clients who couldn't afford real lawyers. The way Gregory's hands hung loose at his sides in that moment, not performing yet, not being watched yet, just existing in the character's skin, being Atticus before the cameras rolled. And then Harper saw it, the detail that shattered her completely, that broke through every professional distance she tried to maintain. Gregory Peck had developed a slight belly, not large, not the exaggerated padding some actors might use to suggest middle age and gravity. Just the small, dignified roundness of a 40-something widower who ate his meals at odd hours because he was feeding children first and himself second, who forgot to exercise because he was too busy raising a daughter and son alone and defending innocent men in court for fees he'd never collect and causes he'd never abandon. It was her father's belly, exactly the exact shape, the exact gentle proof that Atticus Finch wasn't some marble monument to virtue, but a human being made of flesh and appetite and mortality and fatigue. Not just principal walking around in a suit, but a man who got tired and ate too much sometimes and carried the weight of the world in more ways than one. Harper Lee's breath caught in her throat like a sob trying to escape. The soundstage noise, hammers and voices and someone testing a microphone calling, "Check, check, 1, 2. All of it faded into a kind of underwater silence where nothing existed except this moment, this impossible gift, because Gregory Peck hadn't just put on a costume and learned some lines. He'd become her father. The way he stood with his weight settled on his heels, the way his eyes looked at nothing in particular while his mind worked on something specific, the way his jaw set when thinking hard about justice. It was a Massa Coleman Lee resurrected, walking out of memory and grief and into light and life. Harper Lee burst into tears, not the polite dampness you can hide behind a handkerchief and pretend is allergies or emotion from a touching scene. Real sobbing, the kind that comes from somewhere below the stomach, from the gut, from the part of grief that lives in your bones even years after you've scattered the ashes or lowered the casket or walked away from the cemetery, knowing you'll never hear that voice again. It was the kind of crying that comes when memory becomes flesh again, when time collapses and a lost father feels suddenly present and breathing. "My God," Harper cried, her voice breaking across the soundstage, stopping conversations, turning heads, making young Mary Badham look up in alarm. "He's got a little pot belly just like my daddy." The set froze. A dolly rolled and stopped. Gregory Peck halted mid-step, uncertain for one unforgettable moment. Not Atticus Finch, but Gregory. A man who had put on a suit and made a woman weep.
3 months later, when principal photography wrapped in May 1962, Harper Lee gave Gregory Peck a gift wrapped in tissue paper and tied with string, her hands trembling slightly as she handed it to him on the last day of filming. Not a publicity gesture, Not something arranged by the studio. Her father's actual pocket watch. The one Amasa Coleman Lee had carried through 40 years of small-town law practice in Monroeville. To the depression when clients paid in vegetables and firewood and promises. To raising 2 daughters alone after his wife's death had left him a widower, with children who needed raising and no idea how to do it. Except through love and reading aloud every evening and teaching them that all men were created equal, even when the world said otherwise. The watch was gold-plated brass, not expensive, scratched from decades of being pulled in and out of vest pockets, the chain worn thin in places. But it kept perfect time. Gregory Peck carried that watch to the Academy Awards ceremony in April 1963 at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, touching it in his pocket like a talisman. When they called his name for Best Actor, beating out Burt Lancaster for Birdman of Alcatraz, Jack Lemmon for Days of Wine and Roses, Marcello Mastroianni for Divorce Italian Style, and Peter O'Toole for Lawrence of Arabia. He touched the watch before standing, before walking to the stage, before giving his brief and gracious acceptance speech that thanked Harper Lee before anyone else. He never forgot what she'd given him. Not the watch. The responsibility, the trust, the knowledge that he brought someone back to life, however briefly, however imperfectly, and that this woman had trusted him with her most precious memories. Years later, throughout the 1970s and 80s and 90s, when Hollywood producers and television executives came to Harper Lee with offers to remake To Kill a Mockingbird for television or stage, when they promised her millions of dollars and complete creative control, when whatever turn she wanted, she'd say the same thing every time without hesitation. Without even pretending to consider their proposals, that film was a work of art. There isn't anyone else who could play that part. Because on that February morning in 1962, when the soundstage in California, 3,000 miles from the red clay of Alabama, she'd seen something Hollywood rarely achieves and almost never understands. She'd seen her father again. Not imitated through Stanislavski method acting or studied and recreated through technical precision, but understood, embodied, brought back to life by a man who knew that great acting isn't about transformation into someone you're not. It's about revealing truth about someone there was. And sometimes, Harper Lee knew with absolute certainty. Sometimes the truth is small and human and perfect in its imperfection. Sometimes the truth has a little pot belly, just like Daddy in 1999. Gregory Peck's daughter Cecilia gave birth to a son and named him Harper, honoring the woman who'd given her father the greatest role of his career and become a lifelong friend to their family. When Gregory died in June 2003 at age 87, Brock Peters, who had played Tom Robinson in the film The Innocent Man Atticus defended, gave the eulogy at the funeral, his voice breaking as he said what everyone in that cathedral knew in their bones.